Hey there, I'm Cassia Streb, and I'm one of the co-founders of Music for Your Inbox. And today we're going to be chatting with two of the members of the trio House on Fire, Andrew Anderson and Richard On, as well as Jen Biworsi, who is the other co-founder of Music for Inbox. And on this particular project, she was part of the production design and the video design. So let me give a chance to invite them, and we can get chatting.
Hey!
Hello. Hi.
You're all here. This is fantastic.
Thanks for having us. Good to see you.
It's great seeing you too. Are you at RASP?
Yes, we are. We're in the studio.
Yay! One of our new favorite venues.
Hey, glad to hear it.
Well, I'm in one of our old favorite venues, Automata, where we actually shot your film. So it's kind of cool. We've come full circle. I'm not in the top part, so the acoustics are very different. Anyhow, I just thought I would chat a little bit about what the concept of the film was, Timescapes for Noticing, and then I can get you all to jump in. So we have this film featuring, I have a hard time calling you a piano trio because I have seen you play so many things that aren't the piano, but your website says that you're still a primarily piano trio. And one of your members, Wells Lang, of course, they are not on this call, but it is indeed a trio. And Jen and I heard you perform premiere, actually, a work of Richard's at the Dogstar Festival last June. And we knew that we had wanted to do a film with your trio for a while. And then we started thinking, what if this piece, the melodicas in my life, could become the sound for this sound film? And so then Jen and I, had a bunch of truly terrible ideas, which I will share with you later. and then we're able to find some really great ideas and come up with a concept that matched, we feel, your musical style. But I thought it'd be nice if I could hear a little bit about how House on Fire kind of came to be. How did the three of y'all meet and get together and decide it was a great idea to have a piano trio?
Hey, Cassie, I do not see House on Fire right now, so they might have been kicked off, unless you can see them.
Oh, I can see them, but they are frozen. You're moving again.
Sorry, I don't know what happened.
Nobody knows. It's Instagram. There's just a big button in the sky that's like, you get a good Instagram and you don't. It's not merit-based, by the way. It's pure chance. So yeah, Richard and Andrew, I was just asking about how your trio kind of came to be and what made you think of having a piano trio. And I don't mean cello, violin, and piano. I mean actually three keyboard players.
Yeah. Wells, Andrew, and I all met each other at CalArts. We did our masters at the same time, starting at 2017. And we were all we were all involved in the piano studio there. Andrew was the only piano major, but Wells and I were performer composers, and one of our instruments that we took lessons on was piano. So we all studied with Vicky Ray, and I think a year into the pandemic, we said we should do some kind of music together, and Andrew just brought the name forward at a lunch one day, and then that was sort of it.
Great. Did you have a lot of repertoire to begin with, or did you pretty much have to commission every single thing?
We picked a lot of pieces that were subsets, so that, four hands, one piano, or piano and cello, percussion and piano, things that involved two of us in various instrumental configurations. The music that involves the three of us are now largely commissions, right?
Yeah. I think in the beginning, the way I went to bang on a can during the pandemic or the year after, and there was this huge idea there about just starting your own group. So I came back and I was like, Richard and Wells had already had their little duo, Sticky Tack, as well as a two piano, two percussion group, and I thought, let me just squeeze my way in there, and.
So you did it by proposing the world's greatest name? Is that how you got your way in the band?
Yeah, I was listening. It comes from a New Order lyric, and I just thought it was so blunt. So the actual term that they use, and apparently this is an idiom, but it's we get along like a house on fire.
Right.
And I always thought that was the most contradictory idiom I've ever heard, because I didn't expect get that to mean we get along well. You know,
Right.
violent imagery.
Right.
So,
Right.
and it's true, right?
Yes. Yeah.
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 Yeah, we get along, and it is pretty violent. But yeah, when we started the group, I kind of envisioned the project more as like a curation group, because there were a lot of duos, a lot of solos, because there aren't a lot of pieces for 3 pianos that are just like arrangements. Right. And also not a lot of places have 3 pianos. So I guess
yes,
with sort of the limitations that we started with and continue to have.
Yeah, well, because I remember, I think it was the first show I saw you in, and it might have been your first show. I'm not going to say the name, but it was a church, because I always trip on the words of that church in Pasadena, and it has the word neighborhood in it. And there was an organ there and a real grand or baby grand piano. And then you were also playing a series of toy pianos. So instantly it wasn't, 3 pianos. It wasn't a sort of Julius Eastman, let's rent all of the Steinways kind of configuration. It was a great show, actually, and I remember really liking the variety of things that I could hear just from the 3 of you, because I know I met Richard as a pianist officially, but in my brain you're sort of categorized as a percussionist. Does it feel appropriate?
Yeah, I don't know what the last time you've heard me play piano was. But I kind of embraced that, like, I don't know what to do with you mentality. I kind of like that. So I'm not a very quiet or mysterious person, but I like the fact that if people aren't sure what I am, that's like the way that I appear mysterious.
Yes, is this what do you play? What do you do?
Yeah.
And so getting to the actual composition that we were featuring in this film, I remember seeing the pitch wander through the Dogstar spreadsheet, and it was pretty much just Richard saying, I have attached some sealed plastic bags to melodicas and have created sort of melodica bagpipes, for lack of a better description, even though that's a fantastic description. You don't need a better one. And then he said, I'd like to write a piece for House on Fire for the Dogstar Festival. And of course we were all like, absolutely, because we just wanted to know what that was. So Richard, did you come up with the idea for like the innovation of that instrument and then pitch it to your trio, or did the 3 of you kind of come up with like, what would it be like if someone put a bag on this thing?
Yeah, it was, so the idea for the instrument came out of a desire to be able to play a long sustaining sound, which as a pianist or even as a percussionist, I can't really do very easily. Like, you can bow a vibraphone, but I don't have one of those. So the desire was to be able to do that, and I can't circular breathe either. But this bagpipe melodica idea happened, and I talked to Andrew about it, and I said, I have this instrument, and separately I said there's the Dogstar Festival is opening submissions, and then Andrew just sort of like just said.
I was like, I don't know, do something with melodicas and sine tones, maybe.
Yeah,
I think they'll like that.
The idea was, so, like, as if it was obvious, like, oh, 3 of them plus sine tones. And I'm like, duh, like, why not?
Right.
So the idea came from him, and then after that, the composition of the thing was pretty fast. I wrote it in a day or 2. It's just a series of chords, but yeah, things happen in sort of that order. It seems obvious after the fact. But it required Andrew's clarity to be like, there it is, there's the piece.
Yeah, well, I think the addition of the sine tones is a huge part of that piece, because it's providing us with this constant steady state, and then through that we can perceive the change that the melodica bagpipes are bringing forth. And to be clear, like, the difference between a sine tone and a person-powered instrument is dramatic always. And in this case, the melodica bagpipe is, it's quirky, and it's weird, and it's not mass-produced, and it's imperfect. And I wonder if you could talk a little bit about, like, do you happen to have one with you? Sorry, I kind of asked you if you did, and I forgot to check. If you don't, it's okay.
I don't, but I have parts of it, and I'll bring a couple of, like, the important factors.
Sure.
Give me 2
Yeah, No worries. We can get Andrew to vamp. But basically, I remember I went to Richard's performance space to pick up some of these bags because Jen and I were designing the lights in the video, and he had squares of plastic, and then he used one of those hot heat sealers. They look kind of like a paper cutter, and you smush them, and then it seals the bag. And but there's like, it's an imperfect system, and sometimes there's little leaks and holes in it, and we certainly experienced some of that on the shoot day as well. But I think that the product is almost ready for commercial release, right, Richard?
Yeah, it needs a little bit more QC, and then we'll be good to go next quarter.
Great. Well, people love buying plastic bags, especially with children in the house. There's no safety concerns whatsoever.
The ones that are completely sealed.
Yes,
right? That's
exactly.
Well, there's a good video
favorite.
on the feed, on our Instagram feed, actually, that shows like the first time Richard posted the prototype to like how it looks in the film, so you can kind of see like what it looks like and how it works, which is kind of cool.
Yeah, and one of the biggest differences from that version A to version B is this little thing. This is a one-way air valve, which I realized I needed after trying out that first prototype, because when you squeeze the bag, the air just comes back, rushing back into your mouth. So unless you're specific about like blocking the tube with your tongue while you squeeze the bag, you lose a lot of your effort because you pump the air in and then a lot of it comes back up. So putting this sort of in between the Melodica and the bag, and then having the tube come out of that, saves a lot of the air from escaping. So that is, I think, the biggest improvement between those two versions.
That's great. I mean, that's something that Jen and I love when we're coming up with these ideas as we think about for films and what have you, is because we think about how can we propel this artist to like the next level, and how can we kind of give them a reason to dream bigger. And I feel like the Melodicas, that when we saw them at the Dog Star Festival, we saw the Melodica sits on the ground or a lap or in front-ish, and then the bag is sort of like under the arm, right, in a classical bagpipe position. And Richard was standing over this giant light, and so it looked like you were squeezing like this glowing orb, which was really like a kind of a focal point, honestly, because you were up in the mezzanine and we could all see you, and the piece was about 20 minutes, I think, or 17 minutes, and it was long and sustained and slowly moving, and so people were just resting their eyes on this glowing orb. And so Jen and I then decided to ask you all if you'd make a video, and of course you kindly said yes, and the fact that you're open and up for anything was extraordinarily helpful for us, because it meant that we didn't have to limit our thoughts to, like, oh, well, like we made you sit on the floor, for instance, and it was never, well, we did ask, I guess, but we felt like it was in the realm of possibility. But anyhow, Jen, I was thinking that, Jen, we could mention like how, first of all, you came up with the projections of the pips of light that appear on all of the bags, so that pretty much each member of House on Fire had a glowing orb instead of just a bag, because we were really kind of stuck on this idea of like, what if the bag wasn't just a bag of air?
Right. So when we saw the performance, I remember really distinctly, like we were both standing in the doorway of Automata because it was so full of people. And we just like looked at each other and we're like, like this needs to be a film. And we, the starting point was this idea of like illuminating the bags, because the bags are like, they're not transparent, they're like translucent, like kind of frosted glass look. So they really do like glow. And so we were like, yeah, we're going to like make them illuminated. But something we always do is like ask ourselves like, well, why? And like, because it's pretty is not always a good enough reason for us. We like to push a little further, like why? And I don't remember who or what, but in a conversation, basically, I remember you saying, Cassia, how like one of the really beautiful things about the kind of music that y'all were performing was that it asks for this kind of skill of listening where you're willing to be patient and like notice slow changes over time, and that's not something we get in normal life, to just like be patient and wait for slow changes, and in that patience get to like really dive into the nuances and specialnesses specialnesses of the sound.
Absolutely a word. It's a word. Don't worry. Keep going.
So, and through our conversation, we realized that there is like a real world need for that skill of like noticing things and being able to be patient and take in a bigger picture by like waiting for that information to come to you rather than like fast tracking it. And we, so then the other thing that kind of happened in our conversations was at one point, Cassie, you were like, I just kind of want to see like something in the bag. Like, what if there was like a goldfish swimming in the bag? But I know that's not like possible, but I just kind of want to see something in the bag. And as often happens in our conversations, I was like, well, it might be possible. And then we, Richard provided us with some prototypes and we did some testing. And basically what we ended up doing was combining colored lights with rear projection using mini projectors. So each member of House on Fire had a little projector behind them projecting into their bag as it was inflated. And we didn't end up with goldfish, although that was like the starting inspiration. When we asked ourselves more of this, like, well, why? And combining with this like skill of noticing things, we were really drawn to the idea of like, well, that's what's so hard about like climate change is it's happening slowly and we are struggling as a species to on a personal level to like notice it. And there is like this connection between like building the skill of noticing or like diving into worlds that encourage noticing over longer periods through scales that are challenging to us to kind of like flex this muscle and draw a connection between like what are the things we really need to notice in the real world before it's kind of like happening to us, which it is. So using that connection, we decided to give purpose to the lights and the projection. So the lights, which Cassia designed, and you can talk more about, depict the change in ocean temperature over, I believe, like 20 years. Maybe
it's actually more than that. Yeah,
okay.
Yeah. It was closer to like 100 years or something.
And so you can see them go from like cooler to warmer temperatures over the duration of the piece. And then the projections put little dots of light, and that represents, every dot of light represents 100 species added to the threatened species list over the course of 22 years, which is again mapped onto this time frame. So you can see the kind of progression of that. And something that was really wild about like finding that information, because I was looking up, okay, at first I was like, how many species are going extinct, right? Because that's the number that I was like thinking of. And the wild thing is like, we don't know, because we don't know how many species are in the world, first of all, and like which ones are disappearing, which was just shocking information to me. Like we just actually don't know how many species go extinct every year. So instead it was how many get added to a threatened list. But yeah, it kind of like puts there are these three kind of strands of information. There's like the musical sound and nuances, the light showing like temperature change, and the projection showing how all of these changes are affecting the other animals around us.
Yeah, I think the projections were really effective because we were able to zoom right in. And I was using the operated camera on Andrew, and it was wild to watch because Andrew, you're, I think, just a very peaceful performer. It was incredibly meditative to watch you play and so closely. I would never be allowed to sit that close to you in the real world, but I was right zoomed in on your hands. And so it was like watching you just very peacefully, calmly play this little keyboard while like the entire world is destroying around you. Like there are all these pips appearing on your bag, and then the colors behind you were changing. And it started out in this very murky blues and deep purples. It was very calming. And then at the end, it just sort of like it's like green, yellow, that was just red. And then of course the irony was not lost on us that we pretty much had House on Fire with this House on Fire,
which we didn't realize till way later.
Yeah. Yeah. But in that was our take. That's sort of what your piece, Richard, kind of made Jen and I think about, was this sort of like time, we called it timescales for noticing, and we're really like thinking about how we perceive change. And I'm curious if, is that an intended outcome when you're writing this kind of music, or do you have something completely else in mind?
Totally. I as as fellow people who are involved in Dogstar and listen to that type of music, I some of my favorite kinds of music is when like nothing happens for minutes at a time, which sort of forces you to examine the things that do change, like almost contradictorily. Um, and in a way, like there's a weird amount of excitement and change within like 3 minutes of a single F sharp chord being held, and only by playing it for that long does it allow you to, or does it invite you to sort of zoom in orally and listen to things like that. And I just want more of those opportunities in my life. So I think writing this piece was almost indulgent. Like, this is sort of this is what I want to eat, so I will cook it. This is what I want to hear, so I will try to write it. I don't know if the time scale, because everyone's sense of time is a little bit different too. So that happened to be sort of my like, okay, 3 minutes is a nice like appetizer. On to the next thing. It was satisfying for me, so I use that as a barometer for the rest of the thing.
It's great.
What's the original title?
The original title, actually, I think Cassia gave the original title for it.
I can't take credit. I was at the table.
Uh-huh.
I think I was inspiration for it because there's a famous Morton Feldman piece called "The Violas in My Life," and Sivan was sitting next to me, Sivan Silva Schwartz, who's on the board of Dogstar and also does some work with Music for Your Inbox. And we were saying, oh, this piece doesn't have a title, and then he looks at me and he's like, how about the Melodicas in My Life? And then we texted Richard, and Richard was like, this is a great name. Richard is like just a case study in like take yes for an answer, and like I just really love your enthusiasm in that realm, because it means that you have experimented in a lot of ways that people are afraid of trying things, and I think that really has kind of it just kind of accelerated your progress forward as an artist. It's exciting. It's exciting. It's exciting to know you.
I no to bad ideas, but that wasn't one. So why would I say no?
Yeah, that's true. That's true. For you, Andrew, when you're performing in House on Fire, I know that it seems as though the three of you are picking repertoire for the ensemble. Are there kinds of pieces that you feel that the trio like should be taking care of and should be tending to as part of the experimental music community?
Could you repeat the question?
I just wanted to know what kinds of pieces, like we now know sort of what kinds of pieces Richard is interested in House on Fire playing and performing. Are there pieces that you feel, not specific titles, but I mean genres and styles of music that you're interested in exploring with that trio?
Yeah. I mean, I think we all have very different tastes, right? Like the stuff that I tend to program on our concerts seem to be the least melodic, I'd say. The most like all over the place, like hyper modernist sort of.
Yeah, more dots on a page than Wells or I. Not to say that we're exclusive to those things, but yeah, I think that's the tendency.
Yeah, yeah. Tend to. I don't know. I have to think about that. But that is what I lean towards, especially solo stuff.
Well, because I was thinking about the albums that your trio's released, or I'm saying this plural. I don't know if it's just the one that I've heard, but anyway, the music you released and the concerts you're presenting, the programs are really varied and they're really well thought out. Like I feel like there's a through line, but I understand that you're all three picking kind of different pieces, and I'm just wondering, are you picking them in isolation from one another, or are you sitting down at a table and fighting it out, or how is that process of curation?
We suggest pieces to each other. Like we have a group chat where we'll just drop in links every so now and then, and I think from that we have an idea. Like for example, there's this Earl Brown piece called Corrobore, which is for 2 or 3 pianos that we want to do. We were going to do it for our last concert. Ben Richter's commission, but for a variety of logistical reasons, it couldn't happen. So like I know that that's on our radar for future projects, right? Actually, same thing with this John Cage piece that we just did play. It was sort of floating in my brain for a little bit, and it seemed like a good opportunity to use it there. So I think we have like a like a short-term memory of pieces to pull from, and where applicable, we will put them in. And because even though our tastes are so different, there is a general consensus of what makes a program function well. So more often than not, we'll agree that, oh, this belongs here, this probably doesn't, we'll save it for another day.
Yeah, and it's become easier with the commission cycle we're doing this year, because it's like, oh, that I think this piece would go well with Eric's piece or personality or something like that. Throw it on that concert. But,
when you say Eric, do you mean Eric Leonardson, and are you going to play oscilloscopes?
No, I would like to. So Eric, if you're watching, call my people. But our next concert, late February, is a commission by our friend Eric Barganier, who you met at Bang on a Can.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's funny, I gave that example, but his piece is 70 minutes, so I don't think we're programming anything with it.
Oh no, Eric Leonardson just said noted.
It's going to happen. Eric follows through.
How deals happen is on Instagram.
He is an incredibly reliable person.
I think it's so interesting. I wanted to kind of ask a question, like when I think of like people coming together to be in a group, I think of like the common things that bring them together, like, oh, we all like to play the same kind of music, let's play together. But what you're describing is opposite, like this, like we all like really different music, and so we're in a group together. Like what is that like in terms of like, how do you support each other or like work through these things, or where are the common grounds that is bringing you together, and what are the hard parts about that?
For me, one of the reasons why I like playing in this group is because it's more about pooling resources and making things logistically easier. I think it's actually more exciting that a group of 3 people has 3 different tendencies and interests.
We chose the group from the people, not the instrumentation.
Yeah, we just also happened to play piano.
Yeah, so it's like piano trio doesn't make sense, like, our version of piano trio, especially the first year, like concerts full of solos and duos, which is why I mentioned it was more of a creation group in that sense.
Right.
Yeah, it was, I don't know. That was a weird limitation.
Yeah, the first and so far only time we've actually all played. Let me rephrase. The first time we've all played a piano for a piece was for Eric's first piece for us, and the second where we all played our own pianos was Ben Richter's commission last month. So it's taken that long for like the true piano trio instrumentation to even happen for us, but it's sort of a non-issue. Like, it's not like we built the group for that need. It's we're 3 musicians that want to play together. It kind of sucked logistically that we're all pianists, but when it does happen, that's like so much cooler, because you almost never hear that.
Well, I think the great part is that Wells and Richard both compose. So if we need a glue for a concert, Richard, write a piece. Yeah, so I think that's how that was really nice in the beginning. Like the organ harpsichord piano piece that Wells wrote for the first.
Yeah. That was a great piece. That was, well, I mean, just to hear an organ like that was fantastic. Is the Eric the person who just said, hey?
Yes.
Is that Bar? Yeah. Whoop, sorry. I'm not being kidnapped, I promise. Wow, that was my lighting cue to bring it all together at the end here. I am at Automata in the basement where there is no light. So anyhow, Jen and I wanted to thank the trio, the 3 of you, and Wells, of course, even though they're not on the call, but we definitely appreciated working with them. And to thank you for your kind of willingness to try something new and to sit on the floor and face west in some kind of bizarre ritual and have lights and projectors. And yeah, we were so happy to work with you. So the tickets for your sound film and for a postcard by visual artist Sheila Pinkel are available on our website through the end of the month. And I highly suggest checking it out. I've gotten a few texts from people who've seen the video and are really happy with it. If I can make one request before we sign off, could could Richard and Andrew, could you put your heads together so that I can take a screenshot of everyone together? Thank you.
Come on, Andrew.
Lean in. There you go. Thanks very much. All right. So we will see you on the internet or in real life, but thanks for joining us, everyone.
Thank you.
Take care. Okay. Bye.